Welcome to our podcast. I'm Mary Abazia, and of course, with me is Tom Spitali and Sean Wellham. And we are venturing down the path of our favorite concepts and tools, along with one of our most favorite things now, which is AI. And what we're doing is delving deeper into those tools to say, how are we using AI to enable our tools so that people can actually get even more insights out of it. And this week we're going to talk about segmentation. Not only, how do you get it, but how do you use it with AI in ways that, makes your whole planning process so much more, insightful, I guess. So, Tom, this is, I'm going to hand it over to you, and you're going to tell us what you love the most about it or how you want to set the stage for this.
So much to say about this. Let me see what I can, if I can be succinct and get a discussion going, because I think it's if there's anything that AI about our methodology that AI is revolutioning more than segmentation. I don't know what it is. We've often talked about our approach, which is needs-based segmentation, and we've written and talked on previous podcasts about the fact that now you're able to really pursue that approach, which segments companies based on their motivations and their needs rather than information that's firmographic or about how big or small they are, all that stuff. Um, and we've said that while most people have recognized that segmenting according to client needs is the most powerful way to do it, they've always said that it's really, really hard to do. Well, now what AI can do is if you have a needs-based segmentation, it can study everything that's out there about a particular account, a B2B account, its annual reports, its and its websites, anything that's the company has stated that they're trying to achieve and actually very highly accurately bucket that account into a segment, which was always the problem with needs based. So maybe we'll start there, but I've got more to say, but I want to start with that thought and see, what you guys think about all of that and the impact that's having on the whole practice of segmentation.
One of the things I think of, Tom, is the way we do segmentation now in the classroom in workshops is the diagonal ones. And if you don't know what that means, just give us a call and we'll explain in detail. But we've evolved our methodology because it was to accommodate some of the difficulty in other methods given the time constraints that we typically work under. But I was thinking about how AI. Do you remember the question we used to ask? How can good customers be different? Right, it's one of the prompt questions to think about segmentation. We're not looking for good customers versus bad customers. You're looking for how good customers or potential customers can be different. And that can be challenging if you don't have enough time to really kick things around as a group. AI is perfect for that, for example. If you revert back to an old school of saying, just give me some dimensions on how things can be different. And it's almost inexhaustible. Give me 10 more. Give me another 10. I mean, they're not always going to be gold, but you have the ability to generate those kind of lists. And I think it's those thought prompts at the very beginning of segmentation where AI is probably making the biggest difference from my perspective.
Yeah, what I like about using AI for segmentation is that it allows you not only, as Tom said, to go and look at annual reports, but if a company has research available, it can leverage that. And if they don't have research, sometimes we'll conduct, a fair number of interviews so that we have that as a base. So it allows you to infuse even more of that database. And then what is, I think, the sold sign for me was when you said, okay, after you do a hypothesis, because we're testing it out, you do a hypothesis for segmentation, and also let me know which names of companies may fall into those. And that's kind of where the rubber met the road, because that's where people go, oh yeah, that is a patient-centric segment, and that is a business-minded segment. And so that's where I've seen the biggest differences is that people look at it because they can see the accounts and relate it back to those segments and go, that makes sense to me.
And it's
Do you
and
see
you can
those as
ask it
separate
why.
things, though? Do you see those as separate things? Like that's the bit that I struggle with because I totally get it. If you have a good segmentation hypothesis, AI can populate it by studying what people are saying publicly. But also creating the hypothesis in the first place is, did you see it doing both equally well? Is it an order of operations, or how have you guys seen it used? I guess I just want to try and get clear in my mind the different end of the spectrum.
Well, I think what Mary talked about is if basing the segmentation on the top benefits sought and the priority order that a particular set of companies puts those benefits sought is the essence of needs-based segmentation. That's where the diagonal ones method was born.
Right.
Sean, you remember when we used to say how are good customers different, people would still bring in like targeting dimensions, like
Sure.
a good, some are willing to pay for value and some aren't. Okay. That's a good customer and a bad customer in most
Yeah.
situations, unless you're selling the lowest priced widget on the marketplace. So I think that if you use AI to supplement the client's research and say, what are based on this research, based on everything you can see, scout, what are the top 5 or 6 benefits that customers seek in this market, and then, order those in different priority order and create segments. That's to me the way that's basically fail safe. When people do a diagonal ones segmentation in our workshops, we no longer ever have anybody where we go look at their segmentation, we go, that's wrong, that's targeting. Used to happen 50 to 60% of the time. Doesn't happen anymore. We go,
No.
all right, if those are the benefits, these are the different ways that customers might seek those benefits, those are the different segments. Done. Let's move on. Can can
Yeah.
I can I say something about this? I know I'm talking a lot, but I want to say something that I held off in the first because I didn't want to talk for like 20 minutes at the beginning before you guys said anything. But I think what we're finding is in using I think it's helping at least me to see, and I think I've talked about it with you guys. I think you guys see it the same way too. Kind of write a little bit of a segmentation wrong that we used to do. We used to come out of the stakeholder exercise and have everybody like identify 3 stakeholders that were important. They tended to be in a B2B situation, people that played different roles within the company, at least 2 of them. And then we'd segment those stakeholders. Um, and we'd end up with 2 or 3 segmentation approaches, which really wasn't that practical. A B2B sales force is going to go like, how am I going to work with even one, much less 2? And I think what we're finding is because we can validate segmentation at the corporate level, by having AI look at our segmentation approach and then say what corporations fit into these segments. And it has the ammunition for that. It has the corporate reports. It has the letters from the chairman or the CEO. It has the websites to analyze. All those things are written at the corporate level. They're not written by individual stakeholders and say, well, the way I look at it in this company is this way. No, everything is like corporate based that's out there that AI can research. So the right that I think it wrongs is that we now say, let's have one segmentation. Let's segment the accounts at the corporate level. And let's hand that one, or let's work with the sales force on that one segmentation approach. And if we can help the sales force by studying everything that's out there to know what companies fit in each of these segments, who in their territory is in segment A versus segment B versus segment C. It's a much better approach, in my opinion. Do you guys agree? I've been talking a lot about this.
I want to, yeah. So let me go with that too. I totally agree. And you used to walk a line between it being a building that has, people would always think of that as characteristics and not that that building had needs. But the way you're describing it is right. And one segment is for that B2B company is a mixture of different stakeholders having different roles to play. So now what you can do is for segment 1, you can also say, give me another stakeholder map that shows me who's driving the decisions in that type of a segment. Maybe procurement is a driver in segment A, whereas more clinical is still a big driver. They have more of a vote in that committee meeting in segment B. So I agree. If anything, what we can do is go back and do a stakeholder map at that segment level with AI to really understand the stakeholder levels more.
And that starts to generate what I think is another great benefit is these account plans and playbooks that come out of AI that used to take a long time, even with a great strategy. And now you train your AI system up on your segmentation, targeting, positioning strategy. And almost immediately you can say, okay, what's the playbook for segment A? Well, in segment A, they make decisions based on the science. And so, here's who you need to see. Here's the stakeholders you need to focus on here. While in segment B, they're more about the comfort level or the pain management aspects of a particular medical device or treatment or whatever. And so focus on this and this and this. And it begins to allow you to do that very quickly. We talked about that on our last podcast on using AI for marketing strategy execution. So it's kind of all blending together, but it's really exciting, I think.
Well, and it can also do sizing. I still don't quite, that's the black box for me that I'm surprised. And every time, we say, so how big are each of these or what percent do they represent? And it comes back with an answer and you push it and you say, what's your sources or, is it by number of patients or revenue? And when we go back to the clients, they pretty much, no one has said, no, that's not right. So that's another real advantage is that you can do forecasting then, where you have real numbers, you have real accounts, you have real numbers, and you're able to do some forecasting based on, those different segments that you may decide to pursue.
Yeah. Exciting times. Mary, one other thing that you said that you talked about stakeholder maps for different segments, which I hadn't thought of that. That's a great idea. Another thing that we've been doing to kind of streamline this whole process of getting to a corporate segmentation is we've begun recognizing that a lot of corporations make decisions by a committee. It's like a bunch of people sitting around a table evaluating proposals or evaluating opportunities, and they have different kind of perspectives, and the decision-making process ends up being a mix of needs from different stakeholders. And so what's been really effective, I think, again, with using AI, is once you understand, generally speaking, the decision-making patterns in an industry, and you have, say, three stakeholders, maybe one's clinical, let's just talk healthcare and medical device for a second. One's maybe a clinical decision maker, one's kind of like an economic decision maker, and maybe one's kind of like a workflow or operational decision maker. When you do a benefits ladder, which we talked about on a previous podcast, you bring one from column A, one from column B, and two from column C together into that segmentation benefit sought list that you do a diagonal ones against. And that's another way to get at how different segments are driven by different kind of decision-making criteria. This one here might be the one that always puts the clinical the clinical benefits at the top of the list, while this one here might be the one that puts the economic. And this segment over here is the one that says, well, if everything, fits into our workflow, we save money, and that's how we get our bottom line growth, So that's another thing I think that we've been doing differently since AI came on, that clients seem to be going, that makes a lot of sense. That's how my clients make decisions, So it's evolving our thinking about things that we've been doing differently for a lot of years.
Yeah. I love though you got an email recently, Tom, that said, what's that down and dirty segmentation that you do? And you said, oh, you mean Vietnam card sort. And, we would be amiss to not talk about Vietnam card sort as you're trying to sort out customer needs And you can do Vietnam card sort with a committee too, just as Tom's saying, is that you could have a group of people doing the card sort together, and whoever has more of a voice gets to kind of organize the cards, if you will. And then, of course, once you collect even 15 or 20 is crazy. It doesn't have to be a lot. And you feed that into AI, it also is another really good way to start to build that hypothesis, because it has all the information and that you've done, reasonable without crazy expensive research, that it can then read the patterns.
Yeah. Who knew, Sean? All those years in Vietnam.
It's interesting that the more I think about AI in these contexts, it's a multiplier, because a lot of the times I mentioned earlier, we were constrained by what we could do given time constraints and knowledge and everything else. And AI has lifted so many constraints. It actually gets us back to doing what we would ideally want to do, which was just impractical historically. So it's that multiplier effect. The idea that we now segment at the corporate level. If you remember, when I was learning at your knee, Tom, when you were a grizzled old teacher and I was that young bright thing, do you remember those days? And I'd say to you, Tom, why is it that we segment individuals? And you said, well, the thing is, son, you said, they can't quite get enough information at the corporate level. The buildings can't have personalities, you said to me, knowingly, wisely. But of course, it's all changed. And all joking apart, we now have the ability to segment corporates with their ethos and values, because every employee represents them to some extent. But then have that subtlety. That's almost like key account sales, of thinking, oh, well, Charlie is involved in this decision, and so is Bill. Bill really cares about the science. Let's make sure we give Bill lots of sciencey stuff, but Charlie really cares about the environment, and so on and so forth. So you can use the very best of segmentation all the way through to almost a transactional basis. But none of that is possible without AI. It's not magic. It just lifts constraints, and it's all the better for that. It still requires human thought. It just makes that a lot more a lot easier to apply.
I like your phrase, the great multiplier. It is true. It's multiplying the capabilities, and it's dividing the amount of time it takes.
And what's it adding and what's it subtracting? Come on, let's do all four functions.
All functions.
It's adding happiness and subtracting frustration.
There you go. We're done. We've got today's math class all done.
Yes, yes. Anyway, we hope that you try segmentation, especially using AI. And of course, as Sean said, if you have any questions, we are always here and happy to talk about it, of course. Thank you.